you'll indulge me, I have some things to say. For the most part, looking around the room, I will be preaching to the choir, but things still need to be said. Thank you to my mother-in-law, Heather, for that wonderful introduction. For a minute there, I wasn't sure who they were talking about. But seriously, mother-in-laws, they get bad rap. They have throughout history. But I'm fortunate that Sandy is more than that. She's a friend, she's a confidant, she's an advisor. I'm lucky to be part of her life. It's going to be a long speech. Again, thank you to the Hall of Fame Committee. I'm humbled to be included in the inaugural class. Reading through their accomplishments in the brochure, you can see why it's humbling. I mean, literally speaking, the buildings and the fields in our town are named after these people. I'd like to talk to you about 3 things tonight that made me the man that I am. It's through my participation in sports, and specifically team sports, that I am who I am. The value of team sports cannot be overstated. Team sports teach young men and women responsibilities to themselves and their teammates. They teach valuable social skills. They teach you how to succeed, and they teach you how to fail. The first thing I'd like to address are the coaches in my life. When I think about the coaches that I've worked with and played for, I'm in awe. It's a veritable who's who of Bethel sports. I have some names I wrote down. I hope I don't leave anybody out. Bill Fetch, Jim Reynolds, Carl Forensic, Augie DeLuca, Bill Benzing, Pete Burak, Bruce Martin, Gary Raymond, Joe Crimmy, Brendan Galvin, Ray Buckley, Angelo Franzisi, Bill Hunt, Tom Pardalis, and of course, Ralph DeSantis. Many of these coaches contributed in turning me from a cocky, lazy, snot-nosed little punk into someone who at least had the tools and a chance to succeed. The common thread for all these coaches is that they're educators first. I was fortunate to learn the art of coaching from these fine men. The nature of the coach is to correct when necessary, to applaud when possible, and to teach constantly. In sports, as in life, without learning, there's no development and no possibility of continued success. It should be no surprise that I became an educator. It should also be no surprise that I became a coach. From my perspective, pairing young athletes with good coaches is a very important part of adolescent development. More importantly, the life lessons that these coaches imparted to me that helped form who I would become as a man. One of the few regrets I have regarding my sports career is not playing basketball as a senior in high school. I remember vividly approaching Coach Pardalis. I was afraid what his reaction would be. He calmly told me that he thought it was a mistake, but that it would never affect his relationship with me. That was a profound moment for me. That dose of perspective about what was important that I got, not on the basketball court, but from one of the great men in my life. Thank you, Coach Pardalis. This part may get emotional. I'll apologize in advance. Those of us who knew Ralph have heard him say deeds, not words. His daughter said it tonight. I still say it to my kids. Maxon looked at me and goes, that's where that came from. Right? That phrase had a huge effect on my life. Ralph knew that it was the accomplishments that were important, not the recognition. If you were talking about something rather than doing it, you were doing it wrong. For me, to this day, it's easy to tell who the good coaches are and who the bad ones are. Right? Here's my litmus test. Whenever you hear a coach start a sentence with, when I played baseball, or when I played football, or you can insert any activity there, here's a problem. Right? Because I can't learn by you telling me what you did. If you could teach me how to succeed, there's something that I can take with me. That wasn't the only lesson I learned from Ralph. There are many others, but none more important than the last one he taught me. I had the good fortune of both playing for Ralph and working with him as an assistant. I always felt that Ralph and I had a special relationship because of this. When I first became a teacher in Norwalk, and I didn't think I had the time to coach, Ralph called me and asked me to come work with him. And how do you say no? You can't, you know. When he got sick and he was fighting his cancer, I was coaching girls basketball. Heather was on the team. We happened to be playing in Southbury, Pomperog, and Ralph came to the game. I hadn't seen him in a while, and if I'm being honest, he didn't really look good. Again, though, if you knew Ralph, he could lose or gain a whole person in the span of months, right? This time was different, though. He looked gone, and it was obvious that he was working hard battling his illness. We had a few minutes after the game to sit and chat. Unfortunately, it was girls' basketball. They took a little time in the locker room afterwards. He told me he was going to beat his cancer in a way that made me believe it. You know, I lamely apologized for not keeping in better touch. And Ralph told me that we all have our lives to lead, we all have our battles to fight, and we all have our families to love. Guys didn't shake hands, guys didn't hug back then. So we shook hands just before the team bus left with me on it. It's the last time I saw him. I miss him. Excuse me. The second thing I'd like to talk to you about are teammates. Although he doesn't know it, I credit one of my teammates with helping me become a man just as much as any of my coaches. During my sophomore year, I had the good fortune of playing basketball for Coach Pardalis with Stan Simpson. Mike's in the audience today. Sorry, Mike. Stan was a senior and a captain, and being a captain, he took responsibility for his teammates' development, and especially mine. We were a very good team that year, huh, Pete? I think we went 4-16. But during that time, I learned a lot from Stan, both on the floor and off of it. I remember a game at Bethel High that was close in the fourth quarter. A player on the other team, Mark Hickson, remember Hicks? He got beat on the baseline, and I came over to help. I fouled the kid. It was plain and simple. But when the ref blew the whistle, we did that. You know, I didn't touch his move at all. Basketball players know. I was off the hook. The ref called a foul on Hicks. Unfortunately, it was Hicks' fifth foul. So he was done. And we ended up losing that game. Stan came over to me right after the ref blew the whistle and said quietly, no one else could hear. He didn't want to embarrass me, because that's how he was. He said, next time, raise your hand. I remember that flash of insight that hit me to this day. Stan was saying, take responsibility for your actions. Protect your teammates. Do what's right for your team. All that in one little sentence. That's just one small example of the things I learned from Stan. He understood what it meant to be a captain and a leader. The last thing I'd like to talk to you about is family and how it played and plays such a vital role in my life. I had the pleasure of playing football my senior year with my brother Joe. He may not know it, but it was one of the proudest times of my life. Not many people get to do that. We shared experiences at home, at school, and on the field. But it's not that year that I want to talk about. It's the next year, my brother's senior year, of which I am the most proud of him and his accomplishments. That year, I had signed with the Dodgers and was going to school during the fall term. I was working out, getting ready for spring training, and my brother was putting together a football season like no other at Bethel High School. Put simply, my brother Joe is the best high school football player I've ever seen. His senior season may be the best single season any Bethel High player has ever had. He won a scoring title as a wishbone quarterback. He ran back punts. He ran back kickoffs. He played defense. The kid never left the field. Joe was not only named All-State football for Class M, but he was named All-State All Divisions as the best quarterback in the state. Something that's only happened twice in the history of Bethel High. Once in 1964, the year I was born, a man named Dave Campbell, and then again in the fall of 1982. I don't know if you know about that. I'm glad Joe could be here tonight with his wife Nancy to share this with me. I grew up with a father who would do anything I needed for sports and for life. That's not an indication of what he bought for me. Rather, it's an indication of what he provided for me. Our unwritten rule growing up was that if you played sports, you didn't have to work. Essentially, the sport was your job. I don't know if my dad knows how thankful I am for that, and for the fact that he made it so. I remember one Saturday, my dad and I went to the back of Rockwell High School. My dad would grab his glove and a bag of baseballs and throw batting practice to me. It wasn't a big deal. We did it all the time. There was no screen for protection. No cage, no fielders. He would throw, I would hit, then we'd go shag the balls and do it over again. That Saturday, as we were walking off the field, I bumped into a friend of mine, and he asked what we were doing. I told him, and he said, wow, I wish my dad would do that for me. And that's when I realized my dad wasn't like all the other dads. I'm making a mess here. During my sophomore year at BHS, my dad hooked me up on a summer baseball team whose home field was in Hopewell Junction, New York. And that was the closest town we played in. That summer, my dad drove me to towns like Pine Bush, Kingston, and Saugerties, New York. Didn't matter that he had to go to work the next day to a job he hated. It was best for me to play, and he did everything necessary to provide what was best for me. For those of you that know me, I don't require a lot of compliments. In today's world, I think athletes get far too many compliments, and then they start to require them. One of the things I learned while playing professional sports is that athletes are just like everyone else. They just happen to be very good at one thing. And usually it's not a very important thing. Ask Tiger Woods. What's more important, your golf game or your family? Ask Joe Paterno. What's more important, your coaching or those poor kids that got victimized at your school? I'm not saying that all athletes are bad. Obviously, I wouldn't be here if we weren't out in sports. What I am saying is that heroes aren't on ESPN and YouTube. They're in our towns, in our communities, and in our families. Most of the heroes in my life are in this room. But I do want to share with you the best compliment I ever received. I was at my mother-in-law's 50th birthday party. The kids were small. I don't think Hayden was even walking yet. Doug Fahrenkopf, my father-in-law's best friend, caught me playing with my kids while Kelly and I were hoofing it, trying to make sure everybody had a good time. And he said to me, "You're a great father." Nicest thing anyone ever said to me. Had a great role model. My mother's taught me so much that I'd be boring you more than I already am if I went into it. Suffice it to say that she's responsible for my family ethic. She's the one who taught me that you must be happy at home or you won't be happy anywhere. The outside world is just that, outside. You must take care of your family and the rest will take care of itself. As all the parents in this room know, parenting can be at once the most thankless and the most rewarding job on the planet. My kids are here tonight, and I hope I've shed some light on why I have such high expectations for them. I am fortunate to have 3 great kids with so much potential for success. Hopefully I can be that positive force in their lives that helps them make the most of their potential. I love my kids, and I wouldn't trade them for anything or anyone. Finally, I have one more person to thank. I was fortunate enough to meet my soulmate when I was 15 years old. And even more fortunate that she waited patiently while those ugly years went by before I realized that she was my soulmate. Kelly, you're a fabulous wife and mother. Our kids wouldn't be the strong, independent young men and women that they are without you in their lives. You're my best friend. I love you. I can't think of anyone I'd rather spend the rest of my life with. For this wonderful recognition, and to you for all your patience. To say that I stand on the shoulders of giants would be the understatement of the century. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.